Tasha wiped the counter for what felt like the 100th time that morning, her hands sticky from syrup and coffee spills, yet she smiled anyway, greeting every customer with a warmth that came from somewhere deeper than just politeness. She worked in a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where regulars knew your name and strangers quickly felt like family. The bell above the door jingled constantly, and Tasha was always the first to respond, juggling orders, refilling drinks, and making sure everyone felt welcome. Even though her paycheck barely covered rent and groceries, Tasha never let her worries show, because she knew that a friendly face could brighten someone's entire day, and she took pride in that. That morning had started like any other. The sun shone weakly through the diner's dusty windows, painting golden streaks on the worn wooden floor. The smell of fresh bread and strong coffee mingled in the air, tempting anyone who walked in from the chilly street. Despite the early hour, the diner was already beginning to fill with the usual crowd: construction workers, office clerks, and a few retired neighbors who came in for their daily chat over pancakes. Tasha moved gracefully between tables, balancing plates and cups with a skill that only came from years of practice. Each smile she gave, each small joke she told, made the busy morning feel lighter. She had a natural way of making people feel noticed, as if their presence mattered more than anything else in the world. Just as she was setting down a cup of coffee for a tired-looking man in a faded suit, the bell above the door jingled again, louder this time, drawing her attention. An elderly lady entered, her small frame wrapped in a faded coat, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to manage a heavy purse and a small shopping bag. Tasha noticed immediately, a familiar pang of empathy hitting her chest. She had seen many people struggle quietly over the years, and it always pulled at something inside her. "Good morning, ma'am," Tasha called gently, hurrying over. "Can I help you with those bags?" The lady looked up, startled at first, but then her face softened into a grateful smile. The old lady's movements were slow and careful, as if she were used to managing everything herself and had almost forgotten how it felt to have someone help. Tasha crouched slightly to take one of the bags, careful not to jostle it, and guided her toward an empty table near the window. "Here, you can sit, and I'll take care of everything else," she said, her voice soft but confident. The lady nodded, a quiet relief passing over her features. She had not expected anyone to be so attentive, especially a young waitress who clearly had her own busy morning to manage. As Tasha helped the lady settle, she noticed the frailty in her posture, the slight shakiness in her hands, and the way her eyes darted around, perhaps a little wary of strangers. Tasha adjusted the chair so it was comfortable, handed her a glass of water, and smiled warmly. "Take your time, ma'am, no rush," she said. Her heart ached slightly seeing someone who seemed so small and vulnerable in the world, but at the same time, she felt a quiet determination. She had grown up learning that kindness mattered more than recognition, and sometimes, the smallest gestures could make the biggest difference. The diner around them hummed with the low noise of conversation, clinking dishes, and the occasional laughter of regulars, but in that moment, Tasha focused solely on the old lady, treating her like she was the only person who mattered in the room. She poured a little cream into her coffee, wiped the table with a practiced hand, and even offered a warm pastry from the tray she was carrying. The lady's eyes glistened, touched by the genuine care Tasha showed. It wasn't just about serving food, it was about noticing someone struggle and offering help without expecting anything in return, and Tasha did that naturally, without thinking twice. As she stepped back to check on the other tables, Tasha felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense that even in her own struggles, she could make a difference in someone else's day. She often worked long hours and returned home tired, but moments like this reminded her why she kept smiling, why she continued to greet everyone warmly despite her own worries. Because in that small diner, amidst the coffee cups and syrup-stained counters, she realized that kindness was contagious, and it could ripple out in ways she couldn't even imagine. Little did Tasha know, as she went about her morning, that her small act of helping the elderly lady would not go unnoticed, that behind a pair of curious eyes, someone was watching, someone whose life was very different from hers, someone whose future encounter with her would change everything. But at that moment, all that mattered was the simple human connection, the smile shared between a young waitress and an elderly customer, the quiet reminder that even in a world full of challenges, a single act of kindness could light up someone's entire day. The old lady shuffled slowly through the diner, her cane tapping softly on the wooden floor, and Tasha noticed immediately how careful she was with each step. She could see the worry in her eyes, the way her fingers fumbled with the heavy bag, and the small sighs that escaped her lips. It was clear she didn't want to trouble anyone, but Tasha knew that even the smallest help could mean the world to someone in her position. Without a second thought, Tasha stepped forward, her apron swinging lightly as she moved. "Ma'am, let me help you with that," she said, her voice gentle yet warm. The old lady looked up, startled at first, as if she hadn't expected anyone to notice. Her lips trembled in a shy smile, and she nodded, grateful but almost embarrassed. Tasha took one of the heavier bags and guided her toward a booth by the window, a perfect spot bathed in morning sunlight. The old lady's hands shook slightly as she tried to adjust her coat, and Tasha instinctively offered her own hand, steady and firm. "There you go, just take a seat, I've got everything," Tasha said, careful not to rush her. It wasn't just about carrying bags, it was about making the lady feel safe, respected, and seen. She had learned over the years that sometimes people just needed someone to notice them, and this was one of those moments. As they settled into the booth, Tasha pulled out a chair for the lady with a smile. Making sure she was comfortable, she handed her a glass of water and placed a soft napkin beside it, small gestures that carried warmth and care. "Can I get you anything else? Coffee, tea, maybe a pastry?" Tasha asked, her eyes bright with genuine concern. The old lady's hands trembled as she adjusted her shawl, and she shook her head lightly. "No, dear, just your company is enough," she said, her voice soft but full of gratitude. Tasha smiled at her words, though she knew the lady meant the attention, the care, and the kindness she had shown. While Tasha helped, she noticed subtle details, the way the lady's eyes lingered on the menu without really reading it, the faint worry lines etched across her forehead, and the careful way she balanced the bag on her lap. Everything about her told a story of a life filled with independence but also a hint of loneliness. Tasha felt a small pang in her heart, recognizing the quiet strength it took to come into a place like this and ask for help. She pulled a small pastry from the tray she was carrying and placed it gently in front of the lady. "This one's on me, ma'am," she said, hoping to bring a little lightness to her morning. The old lady looked at her, touched and slightly overwhelmed. "You are very kind," she whispered, a small tear forming in the corner of her eye. Tasha waved her off with a smile. "It's nothing, really, just doing what I can." She meant it. This wasn't about recognition or reward, it was about seeing someone in need and offering a helping hand. As Tasha stepped back to refill a nearby coffee cup, she couldn't help but glance toward the old lady again, noticing the way she settled into the booth with a quiet relief, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. There was something peaceful in the connection, a reminder that even in small, ordinary places, extraordinary moments could happen. The old lady looked up and caught Tasha's gaze, giving a small, shy smile, and Tasha returned it with a nod, understanding without words that this interaction meant more than either could say. What Tasha didn't know, though, was that someone else was watching from the corner of the diner, unseen, unnoticed, someone whose eyes followed her every move, quietly impressed by the warmth, patience, and care she showed to a stranger. That quiet observer took in every smile, every gentle gesture, and every small act of kindness, recording it not in memory alone but in a growing admiration that neither Tasha nor the old lady could yet understand. For Tasha, it was just another morning at the diner, another opportunity to do what felt right, but for the story that was quietly unfolding, this encounter would become a turning point, a spark that would connect lives in a way no one could have predicted. And as the old lady sipped her water and slowly relaxed into the sunlight, Tasha went about her work, blissfully unaware that her small act of compassion was about to ripple far beyond the walls of the little diner. While Tasha moved gracefully between tables, clearing plates and checking on customers, she didn't notice the quiet figure seated near the back corner of the diner. A tall man in a crisp suit, with an air of calm authority, watched intently, sipping his coffee slowly, as if savoring every detail. His eyes never left Tasha as she helped the elderly lady, carrying bags, offering water, and guiding her to a comfortable seat. There was something about her, the way she moved with care, smiled with genuine warmth, and treated the lady not like a stranger but like someone who truly mattered, that caught his attention. This man, Daniel, had lived a life surrounded by wealth and influence, but rarely had he seen kindness so pure and effortless. Daniel had been accompanying his mother that morning, letting her run a few errands while he observed from a distance. He had expected a simple, quiet breakfast at the diner, maybe a polite interaction with the waitress, but what he saw instead stopped him in his tracks. Tasha didn't just hand the lady a glass of water or a chair, she anticipated her needs, spoke to her with respect, and treated her as if her happiness mattered more than her own busy morning. Every action she took was unhurried and sincere, and Daniel felt an unfamiliar sense of admiration growing inside him. He realized that in all his business meetings, negotiations, and encounters with people seeking favors or attention, he had rarely seen someone act so selflessly. From his vantage point, Daniel watched as Tasha placed a pastry in front of the lady, adjusted her shawl, and smiled gently. "This one's on me, ma'am," she said, her voice soft but confident. Daniel noticed the way the lady's eyes glistened with emotion, and he couldn't help but lean back in his seat, silently observing the interaction. It wasn't the money or the tip that mattered, it was the heart behind every action. And Daniel recognized that he was witnessing something rare, something genuine. As Tasha moved on to attend to another table, Daniel's thoughts wandered, reflecting on the contrast between the world he lived in and the world she navigated every day. He had seen wealth give people power, comfort, and influence, but he had rarely seen wealth accompanied by humility or selflessness, and here, in this small, unassuming diner, a young woman with little to her name was showing more grace and kindness than anyone he had ever met in his boardrooms or high society gatherings. Daniel also noticed the subtle strength in Tasha, the way she balanced multiple tasks without complaint, the way she remained cheerful despite the hectic pace, and the way she treated everyone equally, whether it was a regular customer or someone she had just met. He found himself studying her carefully, wondering how someone with so many challenges in life could still radiate warmth and positivity. It was clear to him that her character was unshakable, and he began to realize that this was not just about a simple act of helping a stranger. It was about a person whose very essence was shaped by kindness, integrity, and resilience. As the morning wore on, Daniel continued to watch silently, noting how Tasha's gestures, small as they might seem, were making a significant impact on those around her. The elderly lady laughed softly at a joke Tasha made, the tired construction worker next to her relaxed a little, and even the man in the corner felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Daniel understood that moments like these were rare and precious, the kind that could change lives in ways money or status never could. He felt a growing urge to somehow reward or acknowledge the young woman who had captured his attention without even trying. Yet he remained hidden, not wanting to interfere, letting the scene unfold naturally. He wanted to see her true self, without pretense or expectation, and he realized that her actions spoke louder than words ever could. It was a lesson he hadn't expected to learn in a diner that morning, that true character was revealed in the quiet, unobserved acts of care and generosity, and that some of the most extraordinary people were the ones who appeared ordinary at first glance. Daniel took a final sip of his coffee, still watching as Tasha returned to the elderly lady to ensure she was comfortable. He knew that this encounter, though seemingly small, was the beginning of something significant, a ripple that would touch more lives than anyone could imagine, and he silently vowed to himself that he would not let this act of kindness go unnoticed. For now, he remained in the corner, a quiet observer of a young woman whose heart was larger than the world she inhabited, completely unaware that her simple, compassionate actions were quietly shaping a story far bigger than the walls of the diner. Tasha returned to the elderly lady with a gentle smile, carrying a tray with a fresh cup of tea and a small plate of warm pastries. The lady looked up, her eyes softening as she realized that Tasha had thought of every little detail. The waitress carefully placed the items in front of her, making sure nothing spilled and that everything was within easy reach. "Here you go, ma'am," Tasha said, her voice calm and reassuring. "I thought you might enjoy a little treat." The elderly lady's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the tea, and Tasha instinctively steadied the cup, ensuring the warmth didn't burn her fingers. It wasn't just about serving food or clearing tables, it was the way Tasha noticed the small things, the uneven napkin, the crooked chair, the way the sunlight hit the lady's face and made it difficult to see her tea. Each little adjustment was a silent message: "I see you, and I care." As Tasha adjusted the chair and smoothed the napkin, the elderly lady's face lit up with gratitude, not because of the actions themselves, but because of the attention and respect behind them. For Tasha, it was Natural to notice, natural to act, she had grown up understanding that even the smallest gestures could create big differences. While she checked the other tables, Tasha couldn't resist glancing back at the elderly lady, noticing how she now sat more comfortably, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since entering the diner. A quiet warmth filled Tasha's chest. It was a small victory, but it mattered. The lady looked up and gave her a shy, appreciative smile, and Tasha nodded in acknowledgement, knowing that some connections didn't need words to be understood. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to watch from his corner, captivated by every detail. He noticed the way Tasha remembered the lady's preferences, how she offered her a warm pastry without asking, and how she seemed to anticipate her needs before they were spoken. In Daniel's experience, people often acted out of obligation, but Tasha's kindness was effortless, genuine, and consistent. It wasn't performative. It was part of who she was. As the morning went on, Tasha's small acts of kindness extended to others as well. She noticed a young boy struggling to keep his spilled drink from soaking his homework, and she rushed over with a napkin, helping him clean it up. "It's okay, buddy, accidents happen," she said softly, ruffling his hair with a gentle hand. The boy's mother glanced at Tasha, relief and gratitude crossing her face, and Tasha returned a quick, encouraging smile before moving on. Every interaction, no matter how small, carried her warmth and attentiveness, showing that kindness could ripple beyond a single person. Back at the elderly lady's table, Tasha noticed a small tear forming in her eyes, and she realized that the lady had been holding on to a lot of stress and loneliness. "You've been so helpful, dear," the lady said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know when anyone last cared this much." Tasha shook her head gently. "I'm just doing what feels right, ma'am," she replied, her tone sincere and humble. She didn't expect praise. She didn't need it. Her reward was seeing someone feel comforted, safe, and seen. Daniel felt a rare emotion stir within him, admiration mixed with awe. He had never witnessed someone handle so many responsibilities with such grace, patience, and warmth. He could see why people were drawn to her, why they felt lighter in her presence, and he began to understand that sometimes the simplest acts, offering a seat, adjusting a chair, pouring a cup of tea, could carry more impact than grand gestures or expensive gifts. Tasha moved seamlessly through her morning, attending to tables, clearing dishes, and checking on every customer. Yet no matter how busy she was, she always returned to the elderly lady, making sure she had everything she needed. Each small act, each careful adjustment, each warm smile, became part of a larger story, a story that Daniel was silently witnessing and recording in his mind. He realized that these simple gestures were not ordinary, they were extraordinary because they came from the heart. By the time the elderly lady finished her tea, she was smiling genuinely, relaxed and lighter than when she had first walked in. Tasha helped her gather her things, ensuring the bags were secure and the coat comfortably wrapped. As she guided the lady toward the door, Daniel felt an unspoken understanding that this young woman's life, though humble, radiated a richness far beyond wealth or status. It was the richness of a kind heart, a generous spirit, and small acts that changed the world. Quietly but powerfully. And as Tasha returned to her work, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. He had just witnessed someone remarkable, someone whose compassion would leave a lasting impression not only on the elderly lady but on anyone fortunate enough to cross her path. It was in these small, unnoticed moments that true greatness revealed itself, and Daniel silently vowed to honor it in the days to come. The morning had been going smoothly for Tasha, her hands moving almost automatically as she carried plates, poured coffee, and checked on customers. The diner was lively but calm, the hum of conversation and clatter of dishes blending into a comforting rhythm. She was used to handling multiple tasks at once, balancing orders and making sure everyone felt attended to. Yet, as she approached the elderly lady's table again, something unexpected happened that would test her patience, her composure, and her character. A sudden jolt from a nearby table caused a glass of water to tip over, splashing across the table and onto the elderly lady's shawl. The cold liquid made her gasp, and Tasha's heart jumped instantly. "Oh no," she exclaimed softly, rushing forward. The lady looked embarrassed, her hands shaking as she tried to blot the wet fabric with a napkin. It's okay," Tasha said calmly, taking charge without panic. "Let me help you." She carefully removed the glass, wiped the spill, and replaced it with a fresh one, making sure the lady's shawl and clothes were dry. Tasha didn't complain, didn't sigh, and didn't make a fuss. Even though she had a tray full of orders waiting for other tables, she focused entirely on fixing the situation, her hands steady and her movements precise. She offered the elderly lady another napkin, brushed off the table, and adjusted the chair so it was comfortable again. "I'm so sorry about that, ma'am," she said gently, "accidents happen. But you're perfectly fine." The lady's eyes welled up with gratitude, touched not only by Tasha's efficiency but by her calm kindness. From his corner, Daniel watched with increasing admiration. His eyes followed Tasha as she handled the unexpected accident without a single complaint. He could see the difference between someone doing a job out of obligation and someone whose heart genuinely cared. Tasha didn't just fix the mess, she reassured, she comforted, and she uplifted, all in one motion. In that moment, Daniel realized that character revealed itself most clearly during tests, when patience and kindness were challenged. And Tasha passed with flying colors. The nearby customers, who had noticed the spill, murmured apologies and offered to help, but Tasha waved them off with a reassuring smile. "I've got it, thank you," she said. Her voice carried no irritation, only sincerity. She knew that small accidents happened every day, and it was how one responded that mattered far more than the mistake itself. Daniel leaned back, impressed, thinking that in all the years of observing people in high-pressure situations, he had rarely seen such grace under pressure. Tasha didn't stop at simply cleaning the mess. She went further, checking that the elderly lady's tea hadn't cooled too much, that her shawl was still neatly in place, and that she was comfortable again. She offered another pastry, lightly joking about how mornings could sometimes be unpredictable. The lady laughed softly, feeling at ease once more, and Tasha's smile grew warmer. Her natural ability to turn a small accident into a moment of care and connection was remarkable, and Daniel felt something shift inside him, a mix of respect, admiration, and quiet awe. As the morning continued, Tasha handled every task with the same level of attention and care. She served other tables, wiped counters, and refilled drinks, yet she frequently checked back on the elderly lady, making sure she had everything she needed. Each action, no matter how small, demonstrated her dedication not just to her job but to the people around her. Daniel knew that these moments revealed the depth of her character, showing patience, empathy, and humility in a way that couldn't be faked. When the elderly lady finally smiled and nodded, content with her meal and the care she had received, Tasha took a step back, satisfied that she had done all she could. She wiped her hands on her apron and glanced around, unaware that someone had been silently witnessing her every action. Daniel realized that the quiet test of patience and composure had revealed far more than her skill at serving coffee. It had revealed her heart, her values, and her rare ability to care for others without expecting anything in return. It was in these small, challenging moments, the unexpected spills, the trembling hands, the quiet fears, that Tasha's true character shone brightest, and Daniel knew, without a doubt, that he had seen something extraordinary, something worth remembering. The young waitress, unaware of the life-changing attention she had attracted, continued her work, moving from table to table with a smile, and in doing so, left an impression that would ripple far beyond the walls of the diner. After the small accident was resolved, Tasha returned to her other duties, carrying plates, pouring coffee, and smiling at every customer as if nothing had happened. Yet, in the back of the diner, Daniel's attention never wavered. He had been quietly observing her for the entire morning, and now he began to understand something deeper. Tasha's actions were not simply kind gestures, they were a reflection of her character, of a heart shaped by empathy, humility, and resilience. Daniel leaned back in his seat, recalling the moments he had witnessed, the careful way she guided the elderly lady to the table, the gentle handling of the spilled water, the warmth in her voice, and the way she treated every person as if they mattered. It was rare for him to be impressed by anyone so effortlessly, because in his world, most acts of kindness were calculated, performed with expectation, or motivated by reward, but Tasha's kindness had no strings attached, and that realization struck him more profoundly than any luxury he had ever owned. He noticed small, subtle details that others might have missed, the soft way she brushed a stray hair from the lady's face, the way she adjusted the shawl to keep her warm, and the quick, thoughtful glance to ensure she was comfortable. these were not actions dictated by duty, they were born from genuine care, the kind of care that made a stranger feel seen, valued, and safe. Daniel realized that this young waitress, who faced her own struggles every day, carried a strength and generosity far greater than most people he had ever met. Curiosity and admiration grew stronger with each passing moment, and Daniel felt compelled to know more. He asked his mother quietly, "Ma'am, how long have you known her?" The elderly lady smiled softly, shaking her head. "I just met her today, but she has been so kind, so patient, and so thoughtful. It is rare to meet someone who helps others without expecting anything in return. She has a heart that sees the world differently." Her words confirmed what Daniel had sensed all along. Tasha's actions were not performative or accidental, they reflected a character shaped by humility and care. Daniel's mind raced as he thought about the contrast between Tasha's life and his own. He lived in a world of wealth, privilege, and opportunity, yet here was a young woman, working long hours for little pay, whose impact on others was far greater than anything money could buy. He realized that success, power, and recognition were meaningless if one lacked the ability to empathize and act with genuine kindness. Tasha had something far more valuable, a heart that touched lives in ways that could never be measured. As the morning progressed, Tasha continued to check on the elderly lady, bringing small comforts, ensuring her tea was warm, and engaging her in gentle conversation. Daniel observed quietly, noticing how the lady's expression shifted from cautious uncertainty to relaxed delight. It became clear to him that Tasha's influence went beyond physical assistance. She gave confidence, reassurance, and emotional comfort, qualities that few people possessed and even fewer displayed so effortlessly. Daniel felt a growing sense of admiration and a deep desire to honor what he had witnessed. He realized that the diner had become a stage for something much greater than breakfast and coffee. It had become a showcase of humanity, of integrity, and of the quiet, often unnoticed ways that a single person could make a difference. Tasha, unaware of the eyes following her, continued her work with grace, integrity, and a gentle determination, showing that true kindness was not loud or boastful but consistent, patient, and sincere. By the time the elderly lady rose to leave, she held Tasha's hands, squeezing them lightly, and whispered, "You have a rare gift, dear, never forget the value of your heart." Tasha smiled, brushing off the compliment. "I just do what I can," she said softly, but Daniel knew that these words only hinted at the depth of her character. He had seen enough to understand that Tasha was extraordinary in ways that money, status, or recognition could never define. And in that quiet moment, as the elderly lady walked away with a sense of peace and gratitude, Daniel realized that life sometimes revealed its most valuable lessons in the simplest ways, that a single act of compassion, patience, or attention could open hearts, build trust, and leave a lasting impression. Tasha had unknowingly passed a silent test of character, and Daniel knew that he would never forget her. That her kindness had left a mark not just on the elderly lady, but on him as well. After witnessing Tasha's unwavering kindness, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her. He sat quietly in the corner of the diner, replaying every moment, the gentle way she guided the elderly lady, the calm way she handled the spilled water, the warm smile that seemed to reach everyone she interacted with. Something inside him stirred, a mix of admiration, respect, and a desire to ensure that her selflessness did not go unnoticed. He waited until the elderly lady had left, giving her a gentle wave at the door, then stood up and approached Tasha carefully, wanting to introduce himself without startling her. She looked up, slightly flushed from the busy morning, wiping her hands on her apron as she smiled politely. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice friendly and professional. Daniel studied her for a moment. Realizing that this was the moment to act, he extended his hand. "I'm Daniel," he said warmly. "I've been watching you this morning, and I wanted to tell you something important." Tasha blinked, slightly taken aback, her heart skipping a beat. She wasn't used to strangers observing her, let alone a man who seemed different from the usual diner patrons. "Oh, thank you, sir, but it's really nothing," she replied modestly, her voice calm but curious. Daniel shook his head, smiling. "No, it's everything," he said. "The way you treated my mother today, the patience, the kindness, the attention to detail. It was extraordinary. Tasha, you have a gift most people spend a lifetime searching for, and you've shown it without even knowing that someone was watching." Tasha felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She had spent years working hard, helping strangers, and doing her best to be kind, but she had never been recognized like this before. Her modesty made her glance down, and she murmured, "I just do what feels right, sir." Daniel nodded, understanding her humility, but he also knew that humility alone did not explain the impact she had on everyone in the diner. He reached into his pocket and handed her an envelope. Tasha looked at it curiously, hesitating before opening it. Inside was a generous tip, but more importantly, there was a note, written in careful handwriting. "For your kindness, for your heart, and for the way you make the world better simply by being yourself. Let this help you chase your dreams." Tasha's eyes widened, and she felt a lump in her throat. She had never imagined that her small acts could bring such recognition, let alone from someone like Daniel. Daniel continued, "I also want to offer you an opportunity, Tasha. I run a charity program that helps hardworking individuals achieve their goals. I've seen how remarkable you are, and I want to make sure your efforts don't go unnoticed. If you're willing, I'd like to discuss how we can help you with your future." Tasha's mind raced, part disbelief, part hope. Her heart pounded as she realized that the universe, in some quiet, extraordinary way, had rewarded her not just for her actions, but for her character. Tears pricked at her eyes, and she blinked rapidly, trying to contain her emotions. I don't even know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel smiled reassuringly, "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that what you do matters, and people notice kindness, even when you think no one is watching." Tasha took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief, happiness, and a new sense of hope. For the first time in years, she felt recognized not for her hard work alone, but for the goodness in her heart. The reward was more than money or opportunity. It was validation, a confirmation that living with integrity, humility, and compassion could create real change. Daniel offered a few more words of encouragement, explaining how he admired the way she handled challenges, and how rare it was to see someone act with such genuine care without expecting anything in return. Tasha listened quietly, overwhelmed, but her smile grew wider with every word. She realized that life sometimes rewarded people in unexpected ways, that true goodness could open doors she had never imagined, and that the impact of her actions could ripple far beyond the diner walls. Daniel extended his hand again, and this time, Tasha shook it firmly, feeling a bond of trust and understanding form between them. A small act of kindness had turned into a life-changing moment, proving that the world notices those who act with a pure heart. And as she returned to her work, still clutching the envelope and the memory of Daniel's words, Tasha felt lighter, stronger, and more hopeful than ever before. She had been rewarded not just for what she did, but for who she was, a young woman whose heart and actions could change the lives of others in ways she had never imagined. And Daniel, watching her move with grace and humility, knew that he had witnessed someone truly extraordinary. After the encounter with Daniel, Tasha returned to her work with a quiet but glowing sense of wonder. She carried herself a little differently that afternoon, not because she had changed, but because she had been seen, truly seen. For the first time, the small diner buzzed around her as usual. Plates clattered, coffee machines hissed, and customers laughed and chatted. But for Tasha, the world felt slightly brighter, like a new chapter had begun without her even realizing it. She checked on the elderly lady one last time before she left, making sure her coat was neatly wrapped and her bags were secure. The lady smiled at her, eyes glistening with gratitude. "You have such a kind heart, dear," she whispered softly. "Never forget the difference you make in people's lives." Tasha nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she felt the warmth of those words sink into her. She realized that kindness, no matter how small it seemed, could ripple outward in ways she had never imagined, touching hearts, lifting spirits, and leaving lasting impressions. As the afternoon unfolded, Daniel's words lingered in her mind, a quiet echo that reminded her that her actions mattered, that every act of care, patience, and compassion built more than a moment. It built trust, connection, and hope. Tasha felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that her life, though modest and challenging at times, had a value far beyond money or status. It was her heart, her integrity, and her willingness to care for others that made her extraordinary. Customers continued to come and go, some chatting casually, some rushing in and out. but Tasha treated each one with the same attentiveness, the same genuine warmth she had always carried, yet now there was a subtle confidence in her smile, a quiet assurance that her efforts were recognized and appreciated, even if not every person noticed immediately. She moved through the diner gracefully, each gesture purposeful, each word carefully chosen, as if every action could be a small act of encouragement for someone who needed it. Daniel had left the diner quietly after giving Tasha the envelope and his offer, but his presence lingered, invisible yet powerful. It was a reminder that the world sometimes rewarded people in mysterious ways, that goodness could attract opportunities, recognition, and even transformation without the individual seeking it. Tasha carried this realization with her, letting it inspire her without changing the humble, caring person she already was. That evening, after the diner had closed and the last plates were washed, Tasha sat down at her small apartment window. Holding the envelope carefully, she allowed herself to dream for the first time in years, thinking about the possibilities Daniel's offer might bring, not just for comfort or stability, but for the chance to grow, to help more people, and to continue living a life guided by compassion. She realized that kindness was not a burden or an obligation, it was a strength, a superpower of sorts, capable of creating extraordinary outcomes in ordinary lives. Tasha reflected on the morning, on the small accident, the careful gestures, and the quiet observation. She understood now that life had a way of noticing those who acted with heart, that the universe had a subtle but perfect way of rewarding the selfless, sometimes in ways that could change the course of one's life, and she smiled softly, feeling a warmth that came not from wealth or material gain, but from recognition, connection, and the affirmation that living with integrity and care was always worth it. The diner, once a simple workplace, now felt like a place of magic and transformation, a stage where ordinary moments revealed extraordinary truths, and as Tasha prepared for the next day, she knew that this story, her story, was only beginning, that her life, guided by kindness, would continue to touch others, inspire them, and ripple outward in ways she could not yet imagine. She realized that true greatness was measured not by wealth, fame, or accolades, but by the quiet, persistent ability to care, to act, and to give without expectation. And so, as night fell and the city lights twinkled softly in the distance, Tasha allowed herself to rest, filled with hope, gratitude, and an understanding that the world rewards hearts that shine brightly, even in small, unnoticed ways. Her life had been transformed not by chance alone, but by her own courage to act with kindness, proving that one person, simply being good, could create a story worth remembering. A story that would inspire, uplift, and remind everyone that selfless love always finds its way home.